Morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time. I will say that Melissa and Mackenzie last week set some very high standards, so we will be judging you by those, Jaden.
Oh no, I'm in trouble already.
Yeah. So, without too much further ado from me, I'll hand over to you, Chris, and you can introduce the team from BDO, and we will sit back and enjoy another presentation from the team. So, thank you very much.
Yep, thanks, Mark. Hopefully I'm off mute. Yeah, thanks to DNZ for the opportunity to collaborate on this, Mark. Certainly pretty topical at the moment, and yeah, we're really excited to be able to play a part in upskilling people out there to use these tools. Yeah, for those who don't know me, my name's Chris Harvey, and I'm an agribusiness associate here at BDO. I joined BDO coming up 2 years ago after 12 years working in various roles in and around agribusiness banking. I now specialise here in agribusiness governance, but also succession planning. Today's webinar has come about out of necessity, really. We've had a lot of inquiry in recent times for support and upskilling around different farm reporting and planning tools that are available, more so recently with Figured coming onto the scene. What we're seeing is that the current environment is actually demanding a higher level of financial acumen from farming businesses. But luckily, there is some really great tools available to assist with this. The challenge, but what I think is the great opportunity, is to get the most out of these subscriptions that we are paying for. They're not cheap, but you know, if you're not using them, then they do become pretty expensive. Our aim at BDO is to upskill our client base. We want them to be able to utilise these tools to drive their own performance independently, and ultimately help them feel more in control of their own destiny. This tool in particular provides great visibility to the real-time financial performance, and is very user-friendly. It also enables collaboration with that whole team approach, which I think's hugely beneficial. So today's webinar is focused on Figured, but there are a number of other tools, the likes of Cash Manager, that we still use on a regular basis with our clients. There are a lot of similarities in the different products that should mean that parts of today's presentation are still pretty useful for those Cash Manager users out there. So without any further ado, I'll pass over to Jaden. Jaden's one of our Figured gurus here. Jaden's going to run you through some useful tips on how to use Figured, the mechanics, but also what we believe are the most useful reporting features of the tool. Ryan Stockman, another of our advisors here at BDO, is also on the call, and he'll be helping Mark with any of the questions that you might have. So feel free to fire a few through as we progress. We'll stop and answer them as we go, and there'll also be a Q&A at the end. So Jaden, I'll leave it to you.
Great, thanks Chris, and welcome everybody to the session this morning. I'd just like to start by just letting you know a bit of my background. I grew up on a sheep and beef farm in Dannevirke, and then when I left school I went and became an agricultural diesel mechanic for quite a number of years, to servicing the sector, and I saw some very interesting sights in that job also on the farm, before moving on to sell farm machinery for class harvesting and power farming. And then I finally gave up the nuts and the bolts for numbers. So now a chartered accountant working with the agribusiness sector here at BDO. But one thing I did notice over the years is that sometimes farming, especially the business side of farming, can be very frustrating. Look, farmers love farming, but this other side is what can really get on your nerves sometimes. And what do I mean by that? Well, farmers have to wear so many different hats, don't they? Let's face it, you're the CEO, you're the CFO, you're the HR manager, and then you throw some the environmental regulations into that, along with some unpredictable stock, and also farm machinery to boot, and you've got quite a recipe there. And then, just to make things worse, is over the last few years, your accountants come along and put all your accounting information up into the cloud. And although this is fantastic for viewing reports, a lot of our clients, and even if they're on other software like Cash Manager Rural or any other accounting software, they're struggling to get the information out, good, timely information. So this morning, we want to try to help you find the right numbers, because sometimes trying to get these numbers out is like trying to get a needle out of a haystack, isn't it? And then when you finally get the numbers on screen, you can't see the wood from the trees. So we really want to help you out this morning and get you in the driving seat to be able to pull these reports and use this information that you have at your fingertips. So in a nutshell, this is what we're going to look at today. We're going to use Figured to pull out useful information. And then we've got the information there. We're going to run you through how to make sense of the numbers presented. And Chris is also going to touch on some really good practices to ensure that you're maximizing your bottom line from the information that you report into. And we've also got some time at the end there, so feel free to ask some questions along the way too if you like, but we have got a dedicated section there at the end for you to ask your questions. So let's get started, shall we? The first thing I really want to touch on is that if you put rubbish into your accounting software, you're only going to get rubbish out. So the base of everything, what we're talking about today, is zero is where the information enters in from. So you need to make sure that you're spending a bit of time, make sure that your coding is up to date, everything is lined up before you go anywhere. And like I said, take your time. Don't rush through this step, because if you do, you're only going to get rubbish out the other end. And this is going to ensure that the information that you're looking at in Figured is accurate and timely. So remember that concept, rubbish in, rubbish out. Once you're happy with that, once you've got zero all lined up, now you can go over to Figured. Now Figured has a few things that you need to know about it first. First one is you need to get in sync. And no, this isn't some 90s boy band that we're talking about here. I will run you through a bit of that in a moment, some more information about it. Also, learn the language. We need to learn the language of our accounting software to ensure that we are reporting to the right things. And then check out who's at the bar. So you might be thinking, what on earth do these three things mean? Let's go through them one at a time. Get in sync. What this is all about is lining up your information from zero to Figured. You've got to make sure there's a really strong connection flowing across over to Figured so it's reporting the right numbers. And how do we know if our file's in sync? Well, Figured's pretty clever here. It's got a little icon down the bottom, a little zero picture there, that when it is in sync, you'll see a green tick. Now, most things that are green in Figured are good, and Chris will touch on that later. But if you don't see a tick there, you need to click on that icon and this panel's going to pop up and it's going to allow you to resync this section.
And I'll just, sorry, Jen, I'll just jump in. And so you have a real good point there about syncing with Figured. So below it says updated 1 hour ago. So what Figured does, it generally resyncs with zero every night. But if you say jump in first thing in the morning, smash out some coding and you want to run some really good reports, the key is you just need to check when it was last synced, because sometimes you'll need to force it. So where the red arrow is, just force the sync so you make sure that you're looking at the right information, because the last thing you want to do is to make some decisions on some information if it hasn't talked to zero. So yeah, so just briefly, it updates it, but you can force it if you jump in.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ryan. So make sure everything is lined up. Make sure all those cows are lined up. Okay, the next one we're going to touch on is learning the Figured language. For all your accounting software, you need to make sure that you understand what the words mean. Now in Figured, we've got three main ones. We've got actuals, snapshot, and forecast. Actuals is quite easy. That's your here and now. So that's what's going in and out of your bank account in zero. That's actually what's happened, the cash movement. Snapshot, on the other hand, is a moment in time. And this could actually be better referred to as the budget. So at the start of the season, you're going to project out how or what the figures are going to be for the next year. When you do that, once you're happy with it, you're going to take a snapshot. It's like a picture and lock that down into Figured. The other key feature in Figured is the forecasting option. Now, what the forecast option allows you to do is as you're progressing through the year and things change, like your milk payout, or you may have a drought and these things weren't in the budget, you can actually update your planning grid and it'll show in your forecast. Now, a really key thing to note here is if you don't update your forecast, it's going to be exactly the same as your snapshot. But as you get more confident, using the forecast tool is really fantastic to make sure that your numbers are all up to date. Once you've done that, you've learnt the language, now you need to check out who's at the bar. And this isn't quite as exciting as it sounds, but it's vitally important because this is what drives your reports in Figured. And the bar is that blue section at the top of all your reports. So you see there in this blue bar, we're reading to the 2021 year. We've got actuals and forecast figures, and the actual figures are up to April 2020. Now this is just an example, but it shows you that you can move the arrows around and you can select whatever you want here to report to. So the key thing is always check out who's at the bar. As soon as you bring up a report on your screen, check it to see it's exactly what you're trying to report to. Okay, so that was the simple side of things. And now it's time to put the cups on and pull those reports. Here's 3 of the most important reports that you can pull out of Figured, and also from your other software, because a lot of these have features as well. But these are the 3 things that we'll look at as accountants when we're wanting to see the financial performance of the farm. The first one will be cash flow report, and then the variance report and the production report. If you can get a real handle on these reports, you're going to be able to get a good visibility of the numbers on the farm. So I'm going to take you through, it might be a little bit tedious, but I'm going to take you through how to actually draw out a cash flow, all 3 of these reports actually, and then Chris is going to have a talk about what he looks for. The first report is the cash flow, like I mentioned. And I want you to really get this ingrained in your system that cash is king. Cash is what people look for. This is what the bank is looking for. It's looking for what is actually coming in and out of your account. How do we get a cash flow report? Right, here's the mechanics of it. We're going to come over to reports and Figured. We're going to click on that, and then we're going to go up to cash flow. And when we click on cash flow, up pops this top section. Remember, the first thing we need to do is check out who's at the bar. We need to ensure that we're reporting on the numbers that we want to see. That's vitally important. When we're happy with that, we can go over and we can click Run Report. And then behind the scenes, what that's going to do is going to generate your numbers, and you'll see them populate at the bottom. When that's done, you simply come over to Share Report. And then in this report, you want to hit Landscape. You want to hit Landscape because that's going to give you the width of the report. But you can have a play around in this section and get the one that suits you best. Once you've done that, up pops the cash flow report. And now, Chris, what are some of the key areas that you'll take a look at in this cash flow report?
Yeah, thanks, Jaden. The cash flow report is probably the best report to get a feel for your month-to-month cash flow position and to gain a really good view of your bottom line. This is particularly useful when planning for capital expenditure as the season progresses, or things like upcoming tax, or if you're considering structured loan repayments. It's also very useful to right size or quickly assess what your overdraft requirements are looking like going forward. So just zooming into the top half of this client's report, this is a demo file from Figured Beautiful Canyon. I think before you progress, it's important to ensure you're looking at the correct numbers. As Jaden mentioned, the top left should be your first stop. In this report, as you can see there, you're looking at actuals to January 2019 and your forecast or your original budget if you've made no changes from February 2019 onwards. So if you click again there, Jaden, you can see there the difference in the top line. You've got actual to the end of January and then it changes to forecast. So the really key thing there is if you've done nothing to change your original snapshot, it'll just be what you originally set in that plan. If you change your forecast in the planning grid, then that will update as the year progresses. So the next thing you want to see is that your forecast is accurate. And that's generally for timing differences, or if you've changed your farming system as the season's progressed, which is natural. So we're not going to run through today budgeting or how to update your forecast, because that's sort of another session on its own. But it's a really important habit to develop if you want to ensure your plan remains relevant at all times. A typical area of focus is stock sales. So it could be that you've received budgeted stock sales earlier than you originally planned, and that you need to remove a double up, or vice versa. You may need to add sales that did not occur when you planned for them earlier in the year, and you need to include them in the later part of the year. So keeping that forecast up to date is really important, because it can have a major impact on the numbers that you're looking at. Another important area to review on this report is your expenses. So in particular, fertilizer or feed. There's always going to be some timing differences with these lines. It might be that you applied fertilizer earlier in the season due to a better spring, or like this season, you may plan to apply more urea later in the autumn due to warmer soil temps. Whatever the plan changes, the original budget may need to be updated to reflect that. Once you're happy the plan's accurate, you can then see what the numbers are telling you and make some informed decisions. So we just go on to the next slide there, Jaden. Yeah, the second half of the report is where you get your line of sight to the cash position. So with your forecast up to date, you should be able to see what your peak overdraft requirement is, and what your available cash looks like. Done well, this should give you significant confidence when deciding what to do with your free cash, or committing to that structured loan repayment that the banks are pretty hot on at the moment. Nick might be able to comment on that a bit later, given he's on the call. Looking at this example, it could be argued there's a significant amount of lazy cash floating around for beautiful Canyon. Not a bad problem to have. Yeah, do you guys have anything else you want to add to that, Jaden, Ryan, Mark?
I'll just jump in. So when Jaden talked about sharing the report, so there's an option called Save Report, and a really cool feature in Figured is then you can start sharing it with your farming team. So you could give the bank access, the farm advisor, your accountant, and whoever's involved with the farm. And so you can share the report, and the feature that I really like in there is you can make comments. So like Chris talked about the lazy cash, the banker, say Nick, might go, hey, what's going on? Why have you got all this cash here? What should we do with it? So that's a really good feature. And then that goes out to the whole team, and everyone can keep commenting on it as well. So it ends up being a bit of a live commentary on a report.
Yeah, it's a really useful feature. Certainly more and more are starting to use that, and yeah, it just keeps everyone on the same page.
Great. Fantastic, guys.
Hey, Jaden, I was just going to say, I think one of the other important things is if is it actually allows you to get your forecast more accurate as you go through the year. So if you notice on the previous page, just as an example, I think it had animal health costs that were relatively low for the remaining 4 months of the year, and you can see that it didn't really get anywhere near that for the start of the year. Okay, hey, we may need to update that.
Yep.
So it allows your forecast to get refined to a much more accurate level as you go through.
Yeah, I think that the days are gone where your accountant does the budget for the bank and it gets put in the drawer. The beauty about these tools are they're really easy to use and keep your plan live. So you get through 6 months of the year, you have a quick review of this, or your other advisor prompts you to have a look at something, and you can quickly jump in and just change a couple of numbers around and make sure that it's it's a live fair reflection of what's actually going on. So yeah, I think that's a really valid point, Mark.
Fantastic, guys. Well, another really good report that we run is the variance report. Now, this is a fantastic report because what this will do is it will show us how much we're out by. It's a fantastic measuring tool. So let's go on and we'll show you how to draw this report before we talk about it a bit further. Once again, you're back to this blue bar down the left-hand side. You want to click on variance report, and then up pops this blue bar again. And remember, always check out who's at the bar. There's a couple of things we need to check here. And the first one is that it's on cash flow. Now, cash flow is key because this is the actual ins and outs of what's going through the bank account. So make sure that's on cash. When you're happy with that, you can come over and you can click on additional options. Once you've clicked on that, up pops this quite a big blue panel. Now, some really key points to note here. You see what we've ticked a couple there, actual year to date versus snapshot year to date, and actuals plus forecast full year versus snapshot. If you can just click those to start with and worry about those, that'll be the best way to get good visibility simply. These are the two key reports that we look at here. Once you've selected those ones, you come over here and just make sure that you're reporting to the right snapshot. Remember, you could call this your budget or your annual plan. When you've got all these things, three things in line, come over here, click on Run Report, and voila, we get our variance report. So Chris, once again, what do we normally look at here in our variance report?
Yeah, so this report, as Jaden said, is where you assess your performance against your plan, and it's basically how you see how you're travelling, and are you ahead or are you behind? What does your revised performance look like for the full year? So pretty simple to read. I think, as mentioned earlier, green is good and red is not so good. The key purpose of this report is to, I think, identify areas to focus in on. If it's red or behind budget, why? Is it a timing difference, or did we overspend in this area, or do we need to quickly update our budget to reflect a change that's happened? So if we go on to the second one there, Jade.
Yep.
So looking at the top half again, the first thing to check is that you're looking at the right numbers. So in this report again, we're looking at actuals to 31 January. Hopefully that's what you've coded up to in Xero, and the budget for the remaining part of the year. So if you look at the two sort of reports, so these reports are run and driven from those boxes you ticked that Jaden showed you. So you've got your year-to-date numbers on the left there and under the left arrow, and your full year versus budget on the right side. So what you've got effectively on the left is your actual performance for the period that you've coded for the year against the original budget, so that snapshot. And then you've got on the right the revised budget for the full year versus your original plan. So you can see the whole year sort of projected performance with the actuals in place. So if you look at, say, the first part of this report, this is the income section, thinking about what you might be looking for, I suppose you're looking at your income streams and seeing how they're going against your budget. For a dairy operation, and what's been shown in this report is sometimes your income could be up or down. Green in this scenario, it's up. This could be down to the fact that you've done more milk solids, but it could also be down to the fact that you've just had a higher payout than what we originally budgeted on. So it's about seeing the variance and then quickly thinking to yourself, why is this green or why is this red? And if there's an issue, you go digging further, or you basically move on because you know the reasons why. So this report is showing plenty of green, which is good. So if we go to the other one there, Jaden, so another snip here is the expenses area of that report. Again, this quickly highlights if there is any material variance to budget. In this scenario, overall expenses are travelling 46,627 under budget, which is a good result. But as always, there's devil in the detail. So there's some fairly material unders and overs within the different costs that, in my view, should warrant some additional exploration. Because if you've got some material issues and changes from what you originally planned, you need to understand exactly what's going on. So if you go on to the next one, Jaden. So this is the bottom of this report, and I think this is quite useful as well because it's a good summary of your bottom line performance, for the year to date and also the full year. This is where you can see where your cash has gone, or your non-operating movements and capital expenditure. And overall, this closing balance here should align to your actual cash position and your bank account on the day. So yeah, another strong performance reported here from beautiful Kenyon. I think most will be pretty happy with that sort of outperformance to budget. But yeah, is there anything else you guys would add to that, Jaden, Ryan?
These guys might need to call you for some tax help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They make these demo files very profitable, don't they?
Yeah. So maybe a little bit unrealistic, but would it be nice?
Yeah. Just when Chris mentioned about payout in Fonterra, so probably thing we could have mentioned in the cash flow area is syncing your actual your production with farm source coming straight into Figured. So what this does is you just load it through your farm source account, and each month it's updating your production. So this is really helpful for say you want to update the forecast, and if you're with Fonterra and there's a payout change, all you need to do is click a button, and then straight away your forecast is changed to the current price. So no more manual change and spending hours working out what's going to happen, and it's especially helpful when you're doing the deferreds as well. So just another thing, if you're supplying with Fonterra, just make sure to get that synced up, and it's really easy to do.
Ryan, do you know if any of the other companies do or offer the same compatibility?
Not at the moment, but I know Figured are working with Open Country, I think. But one of those things, and a good thing about being a cloud software, that Figured changes all the time. So sometimes when we look at their variance report, there is quite a lot of options. It seems a little bit scary sometimes. So we are constantly talking to Figured with suggestions, and what it looks like now could be completely changed and more user-friendly going forward. So if there's anything that you guys are always frustrated with Figured, on their website you can offer suggestions, or just talk to your advisor, and we've generally got a line of sight with their key guys, so they always want to make it more user-friendly for the farmer.
Fantastic. Well, guys, last but not least, we're going to have a look at the production report. Now, the production report is one of my favorite reports as well, because it talks about how do you compare to other metrics. So we want to make sure that we're not comparing apples with oranges, don't we? We need to make sure that we're comparing to something that's obviously comparable. And this is where dairy-based reports really come in. The benchmarking tool here is very helpful. Now, I'm going to take you through again how to run a production report. And as I do it, I suggest that, you know, when you're running your own reports in Figured, maybe have this recording beside you so that you can step through it at the same time. Because I know it can get a little bit tedious, this bit, but it's so important that you get these steps right so that you can get this good information. Again, we're going down to reports. This time we're going to go down underneath there to production reports. When we click on that, this blue bar is going to change, and we've got a few other some other options here. You see there it says include production from. We need to make sure that we're going to get the metrics from your milk. So we're going to go to the supply number. So click on your supply number, and then all of a sudden she's going to turn blue. And then this is going to give you some additional options to report to. Click on that and have a look through here. There's some key points to note here. Obviously, make sure those blue ticks are on down the left-hand side. And also, remember what we said from the start in all your reports, cash is king. Keep that in the back of your mind, because you want to make sure that you're on cash basis, not accrual basis.
Yeah, Jane, just to that point, yeah, cash obviously is the most important thing to ensure you've got consistency, but just those ticks as well. So those options there are basically what different KPIs you can pull out. So Jaden's got kilograms, hectares ticked there. You can also tick peak cows if you've got your stock numbers entered into Figured, so you can get your income and costs on a per cow basis, which, you know, the dairy-based reports that you compare to will often have, you know, those 2 or 3 different options. So it just depends on how much information you've got on Figured and what you can actually pull. So
great. Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. It's such a fantastic tool. We're just going to use the simplicity of it today, but as you get more confident, you can jump in there and tick some of those other areas and see what it produces. Another key one is if you're going to compare to the prior year, you want to go in this section here and just click up the arrow there, and that'll allow that function. Once you're happy with this bit, again, you're going to run the report, and up pops the production report. So Chris, once again, mate, what do we look at here in this production report?
Yeah, so likewise, Jane, this is my favourite report because this is where you actually drill into seeing how you're performing against your peers and actually where you work on, what areas do we need to focus on and improve on. So, what we know about, high-performing dairy businesses is that they do this very, very well. They compare themselves regularly. With Figured now, you can effectively review your performance for the full year halfway through with your actuals in there and a budget for the second half of the year. You can actually review this every time you do your GST return and see how you're tracking against local benchmarks. So really, really useful and easy to achieve. As with the other reports, again, first things first, I think you need to check you're looking at the right information. Again, for this one, actuals to January 2019 and budget for the rest of the year. It's been run on a cash basis, which is that box we ticked in that previous slide. Then it's drilling into the numbers. So once you've input your farm detail, Figured populates the KPI report with all your key numbers displayed, and this one on a per kg basis and also per hectare basis. This is very useful when you're wanting to compare your performance against the dairy-based benchmark data set. You can quickly see your metrics and can make those comparisons. These reports can also be tailored to your preference. So if you want to see your numbers in a certain way, you can basically do whatever you like. So that's something that I think is really good about Figured as well, because a lot of the other tools are quite rigid. With this report here, Beautiful Canyons farm working expenses, if you skip right to the bottom there, Jaden, at $3.20 a kilo. So as I said, you can quickly see those numbers and make that quick comparison. So we could spend a bit more time on this, and I think what we're going to look to do is actually some benchmarking sessions where we'll help people use these reports and dairy base to draw those comparisons. So not something we'll get into too much detail today, but certainly something we're hoping to help our client base with over the coming 12 months.
My only point of caution, I guess, on this is that often the dairy-based ones have quite a few adjustments in them. The major one will be cost of wages. I know I sat down yesterday to do exactly this, had a set of accounts next to me. Obviously, I don't have Figured, but had a set of accounts and dairy base. I was, this farm's real good. Oh, wait, hang on, there's about $80,000 worth of adjustments out that weren't, that I needed to remove from the dairy base before I could make a true comparison. So that's probably the only thing to be cautious of, but it is quite a cool thing to use still.
Yeah, it's a very, very valid point. Every business is different, so they've got different structures. I mean, they've got different tools and their costs around tax planning, for example. What you need to do is sit down with your advisor and work out, what adjustments you need to make, to Jaden's point, to make sure you are comparing apples with apples. So another one, Mark, is a prime one is depreciation. So I know in the dairy-based numbers, usually there's a wage adjustment. There's also a depreciation charge under our operating expenses. So I think to the tune of 40 cents a kilogram on the average farm in Taranaki. So that can make these numbers look very different. So real valid point.
And I think there's some real opportunity here, isn't there, guys, for some further seminars around this area, because this is a really key point to be able to get through, to be able to run these production reports and have visibility of the numbers here. Has anyone got any other comments they'd like to add before I do a bit of a recap?
So probably just on the benchmarking. So a new tool within Figured is the ability to do benchmarking. So at the moment, it's just available per practice. So for us at BDO, we may be able to set up some benchmarking groups within our own client base if clients are really into it and really wanting to jump in. So something that's pretty new, and I know Figured are working on this and working with dairy base to make this even better. So I think the future for that, for benchmarking and real-time benchmarking, as Chris said, is pretty exciting.
Fantastic, guys. Right. just going to have a bit of a recap what we've learnt today so far before we open it up for the question and answer session. And the first thing I'd want to start with by saying, remember the first thing I said, rubbish in, rubbish out. Make sure that you get your zero file all tidy before you ever move on to Figured. And when you're in Figured, make sure that it's in sync to your zero file, because that's really important. Otherwise, the numbers will not be reading accurately. Again, we need to learn the language, understand what actuals plus forecast plus snapshot means. And this is applicable, obviously, in other accounting softwares. You need to spend the time to know what these words are all about and the jargon that they use. Number 3, always check out who's at the bar. This is crucial in Figured because this is what's going to drive your reports. So take a couple of looks at it, make sure you know exactly what it's driving from. And if you can get a handle on the cash flow report, the variance report, and the production report, you're going to get fantastic visibility of the financial performance on the farm. So I really encourage you to go back in the recording of this and have a go at drawing these 3 reports and looking at the information that's presented. And obviously, a big key part of it is knowing what to look for in the numbers. So, if you need any help around that, feel free to contact your advisor or us here at BDO, and we can take you through what some of those greens and reds mean. So, thanks for that, guys. So, where to from here, Ryan?
So probably where to from here. So similar to our webinar last week. So we are working on BDO Masterclass training sessions. So this will include both zero and Figured for the agri space. So yeah, so again, just watch the space and let us know if you're interested. And another key thing, as the guys have mentioned a few times, is just making sure you're regularly reviewing your reports yourself, but also checking in with your advisor. And just, yeah, always just double check. If you're unsure, ask for help. And also on Wednesdays mentioned last week, we've got Walk-in Wednesday. So between 9 and 11 in the office, or I'm pretty sure we can move that to a bit of a phone call if you're quite away from New Plymouth. But so you can just ring up, ask for help, or drop in and just go, hey, I've got a few things that are bugging me. So you're not just sticking there. And that's a free service as well and available to anyone. So yeah, from there, yeah, does anyone have any further questions?
Yeah, Jaden, I've got a couple to start off with.
Cool.
So you mentioned it's probably one just long one. You mentioned the 3 different reports: the cash flow, the variance, and the production. When would you use those different reports? Because I don't imagine it would be necessary to run all 3 every month, for example, or would you?
Well, we definitely run the cash flow report and the variance report quite regularly.
Okay.
And then like every GST period, we'll be on the phone with our clients, advising them this is the unders and overs. And to be honest, I'd probably run the production report at the same time because the metrics used will be more in line, kg per milk solids and stuff like that. It's more helpful. So to be honest, I'd be probably running those 3 reports at least every GST period myself for my clients. Yeah.
What's quite interesting, Mark, is if you're on the previous webinar, we talked about HubDoc, and with doing batch payments, you're coding monthly. So what people are getting now is actually monthly reporting that's accurate and reconciled, rather than waiting for the GST return to be filed maybe prior to the end of the following month, if you know what I mean. So getting more real-time accurate information and reporting, which I think should be really valuable for most businesses.
Yeah, and just on that, it's just perfect at the moment. I've got some clients doing their batch payment, and then basically the 2nd of the next month, say 2nd of July, everything up to the end of June's coded. So you're not waiting 2 months or a month to see how you're going on a monthly basis. It's just bang, it's right there, accurate, as Chris said. So people are really keen on just jumping in monthly now.
And this is what this session was all about, is just trying to get you guys in the driving seat to be able to pull these reports at home and know what the numbers mean. Because I think that's the key feature of this cloud-based software, is its accessibility and usability, actually, once you know how to get the numbers up there.
How many clients, say dairy clients on average, would be using cloud-based software, whether this one or Cash Manager. I guess those are the two major ones.
Changing. I think the current environment, and I think I touched on it at the start, there's a real demand for this sort of stuff now, where people are, presenting their business in the best possible light at all times. So if I look at the number of budgets that we've helped our clients with this year, and I say help them because we don't like doing the budgets on our clients' behalf any longer. We like to make it a collaborative process. I'd say that's nearly doubled from the year prior, Mark, as a bit of a gauge. And if we look at the tools, I think it's probably getting a bit of a momentum at the moment because they seem to be investing and looking at sort of things like benchmarking and different insights they can provide. But yeah, I think Cash Manager is still a great tool, and equally it's getting used more and more, with the current environment as well. So yeah, I think the stats would have been something like 10% of farmers did a budget when I was back in banking 5-10 years ago. I think that's really shifting at a rate of knots at the moment.
We thought we'd better end on this slide. So
it's not a picture of you, Mark. Sorry.
So yeah, just again.
I was somewhat less happy about 10 minutes before this kicked off than that.
Yeah. And so just again, and from what Jaden had said, the key is to get the bar right. And if you are unsure about anything, just feel free to give one of us a call or contact your advisor. We just want to make sure everyone's looking at the same info and it's all correct. So yeah, anything unsure, just feel free. You don't want to end up being the owl or Mark with computer issues this morning.
Awesome. Jaden, Chris, Ryan, thank you guys very much for your time. Appreciate all the time and effort that went into this. We will have the recording available shortly. Thanks to Phoebe, or maybe you can blame Phoebe if you didn't want to actually hear anything I said. So, because she got me up and running this morning, so and organised the call. So, thank you guys. Thank you all for your time, and no doubt we'll team from BDO will touch base shortly.